We're here this evening for an adjourned special city council meeting. The adjournment of regular city council meeting scheduled for 7 p.m. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Belinsky. Present. Ms. Dolan.
Present.
Mr. Donches.
Present.
Mr. Raschuti.
Present.
Mr. Reynolds.
Present.
Mr. Evans.
Present. There's a quorum. I'll call this adjourned special city council meeting to order. I want to begin by reviewing the events that led to this from Thursday, February 16th, the first session. All 7 council members were present. We opened that meeting with public comment. 5 candidates were read into the record through communication. 5 candidates presented. They presented in alphabetical order. Council questioned and had an opportunity to question each of the 5 candidates. At that point, we moved into nominations. In order, we had 4 nominations. Councilman DiGiacinto was added as a nominee, at which point, following his nomination, he removed himself from any debate, discussion, or election. After that, we also had nominated was Mr. Shire, Mr. William Shire, Mr. George Yasso, Mr. Robert Fenning. After nominations closed, council also had an opportunity to question Councilman DiGiacinto, now is listed as a candidate. Following that questioning, we moved in discussion of candidates by council. We moved to election. We held an election. The election results were as follows. Councilman DiGiacinto, 2 votes. Mr. Shire, 2 votes. Mr. Yasso, 2 votes. We ran roll call 3 times. It locked up with the same results each of the 3 times. At that time, we set a time at which to adjourn. That time was set until the adjournment of our regular city council meeting, which just occurred. We closed out with public comment and then adjourn the meeting. I will quickly review the agenda for this evening. We will begin with public comment, and that will be that public comment will be limited to the resolution which we're going to be voted on this evening, and that's filling the vacancy of city controller. Following public comment, we will move right to the election. Before we take a roll call, and this is for the councilmen, councilwomen, we will have a discussion. We will allow follow-up questions on any of the candidates which may be called up for follow-up questioning. The election, I will remind you, takes 4 votes to declare a winner. If we're able to do that and get that done tonight, we will then move to agenda item number 4, resolution, fill in vacancy of the city controller. We will finish with public comment before we adjourn for this evening. Questions about procedure? No? Okay. We will move into item number 2 on our agenda for this evening. That's public comment on the resolution. There's only one thing on this. This is a special city council meeting with 1 agenda item, and that is filling the vacancy of city controller. If anyone would like to address council, we do have Joey Piazza signed up, so we will begin. Mr. Piazza.
Thank you. My name is Joey Piazza. I live at 1514 Regina Street. I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to speak before you tonight. I'm a 10-year resident in this city. I've been a small business owner in this city. I've been a partner in a number of firms that have done business within the city, and I take a lot of pride in this city. I'm also extremely proud of this particular government. I've come to you tonight to speak in support of George Yasso for controller. I'm not someone who usually does this. I'm not a polished public speaker, so you'll forgive my lack of elegance. I felt an obligation after sitting through last meeting. It seemed to be implied and even directly conveyed that Mr. Yasso was in some way not qualified for this position. I'm not here so much as a character witness tonight for Mr. Yasso. I feel his character, and I'm sure you've done your homework, is unassailable. I've been a client of Mr. Yasso's for the past 8 years, both professionally and personally. He has handled every aspect of both my professional and personal finances, and I've relied solely on Mr. Yasso for anything and everything related to everything from personal investment to taxes to internal audits to just wealth management. These services include pretty much the gambit. Anything accounting related, anything money related, Mr. Yasso has handled for me. Through this process, he's demonstrated an absolutely meticulous nature and attention to detail, and just a vast knowledge of accounting and finance. Mr. Yasso's services have included exact guaranteed breakdowns of my personal returns and my business returns for as long as my businesses exist and for as long as I remain on this earth. I mean, that includes retirement, investment growth, trust, taxes, everything. In my humble opinion, Mr. Yasso's services are the ultimate in accounting, and more importantly than that, accountability. When you're talking about somebody's wealth management or somebody's retirement or somebody's business, that's somebody's lifestyle and their livelihood that he's responsible for. I see very little daylight between what Mr. Yasso does every day, what he does for hundreds of clients, and what he'd be doing for this city. I'm sure if you talk to any number of Mr. Yasso's clients, and there are many, as well as myself, they'll tell you that he has their total trust with their life. I mean, this is trust for my nephews. This is the money I'm going to have in retirement. This is my financial health and my livelihood is in his hands. I see absolutely no reason why we shouldn't trust Mr. Yasso with the same thing with our taxpayer money. Lastly, I'd just like to comment briefly on the decision you had before you tonight. Last stand, it was 2-2-2 with Mr. Shire and Mr. DiCinto. I feel that all three candidates are extremely qualified for this position. My concern with Mr. Shire individually would be that my concern individually as a voter and taxpayer with Mr. Shire would only be that he's obviously a man of great intellect and he's qualified for the position. Would just be that, I mean, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he's indicated that he's not going to run in the next election. I think you'd be squandering an opportunity at both incumbency and more importantly, consistency at starting all over again. Lastly, Mr. DiCinto, I've had the pleasure of reacquainting myself with your biography today. I hadn't looked over it since you ran for office the last time, and you are obviously extremely qualified. It's not light reading for anyone that wants to measure up their own accomplishments. I have two specific concerns with your candidacy, and one would be, as a voter, I elected you to sit in that seat and serve on city council. And I think that your work is incomplete there. You're a strong voice of financial conservatism up there. You've done a phenomenal job. And I think we elected you to finish your term, and that's what I'd like to see. The second, in the last 15 seconds that I have here, the way that this all unfolded, I think could lend itself, I mean, the fair or unfair, the world we live in, perception is reality. And the way, if it even has a hint of impact.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Piazza. Thank you. I don't have anyone else signed up or anyone else like to address City Council under public comment. To the middle, right of the podium and to the right side. I'm sorry, Mr. Intelix? Mr. Yasso indicated would like to speak. Mr. Intelix, why do you?
Thank you. Stephen Antalek, 77 Ridge. After listening to the council's comments concerning qualification of candidates and the reasons for support or not supporting specific candidates, I am impressed with the lack of objectivity in some of these comments. One council member nominated a person who has rarely, if ever, been seen at city council meetings. This makes his candidate an unknown quantity other than his listed qualifications. This member felt impressed by his credentials and felt he would be objective and fair in his dealings with the administration, and obliquely implied that since two other candidates attended many council meetings and are very critical of both council and administration, thus precluding their ability to be fair and impartial.
Mr. Intelix, just please don't question like the motives of council's decision.
I'm giving my impression, okay? Okay? I'm impressed by the absurdity of this claim. For both candidates, have shown clear objectivity during their comments and rarely, if ever, subjectively attacked an individual. Is this type of concern informed, involved, objective, critical citizen who is the backbone of town hall type council meetings? Another council member, although having not nominated a candidate, gave strong support to his colleague's nomination. This member stated he did not have a personal relationship with the nominee, but glowingly spoke of the candidate, at times sounding like a campaign manager, my impression. This decision seems to be solely based on qualifications. A thought: if the qualifications demanded by the position were reviewed by a qualified advisor, and this advisor not being privy to the candidates' names, but chose the best candidate solely on his or her review of all resumes, then clearly the best candidate is not in the running. This puts into question this support. After all candidates had made their presentations from the speaker's podium, one council member felt obliged to bring two candidates back to the podium. The secondary questioning began with a very subtle hint that these candidates, being frequent attendees at council meetings and often being critical of council administration, that possibly might create a bias, thus preventing an objective relationship with the administration. This intense questioning at times borders on a third degree, clearly revealing the firmness and objectivity of the two, thereby putting them in the eyes of the audience possibly as the two best for the position. The other candidates were not called simply there being unknown quantities, all knowledge being based upon the resumes. Another troublesome thought: one candidate stated that he would keep the deputy controller if he were chosen. That set well with a member of council, for this council member faulted a candidate for his claim that he would review the deputy's competence if chosen. Clearly, only one person can objectively reflect on the matter, and that is the past controller. Has she been consulted? I absolutely and categorically do not wish to demean or the deputy controller, for I have no knowledge of his performance. But for a candidate to publicly state that he would make that deputy's review over time reflects sound judgment. This candidate's statement sounds more like being a candidate of a team is more important than being that of a watchdog. Final thought: selecting an unknown quantity for the position could be a disservice to the community, since the position is for an approximate 2-year period. Not attending council and finance meetings precludes these candidates from a solid sense of how local government operates. Might the time to come up to speed be effective requiring that amount of, let me repeat that. Might the time to come up to speed to be effective require that amount of time? Will the city suffer from the lack of a qualified watchdog? Why not appoint a candidate who has both intimate knowledge of the city and required requisite qualifications?
Thank you, Mr. Natalex. Anyone else from the middle section? Okay, then Mr. Yasu yet. There is another. All right, well, we'll go to Mr. Doesn't go to Yasu, I went to Natalex. So go to Mr. Yaso, and then to Mr. Shire next. And then Mr. Fenning in that order.
Good evening. George Yasso, 1413 West Market Street. I wanted to take this time just because I didn't realize exactly what the process would be this evening, how much time we'd get to speak, what questions we'd be asked. So I wanted to take the time to maybe explain a little bit more why I'm qualified for this position. I spoke last time about my education, about the business background, the accounting courses, the investment courses, the management courses, the econ courses. I probably could have expounded a little bit better what I do on a daily basis professionally that qualifies me. And I appreciate Mr. Piazza's comments. I didn't realize he was going to do such a good job with that. You know, I started my career with the company AXA Equitable several years ago. They're a global investment insurance company. It was a very valuable experience for me because of their size. You know, even though my office was in Bethlehem, we were considered part of the Philadelphia branch, which is one of their top branches in the country. I received extensive training in all aspects of investment and insurance and gained a wealth of knowledge during that time. After serving as an advisor for them for a few years, I was recruited by Jim Saratelli to partner with him in his newly formed business, Robertson Ceratelli Financial Group. Robertson Ceratelli Financial Group serves as the financial arm for Robertson Insurance Group. Robertson Insurance Group is a local property and casualty firm with 17,000 plus policyholders throughout the Lehigh Valley. These policyholders include individuals, business owners. What we do is we serve as a resource, a financial resource for all these policyholders. And my time at Robertson over the past 3 to 4 years has been a very enjoyable one. To be able to move from working for a large company where I didn't even live in the city that our headquarters was at, to moving to a local company that served only the individuals in the valley and local business owners. At AXA, I was more of a cold caller and going out to search of clients. You know, in this current role, I'm able to serve as a resource to the current clients and business owners that use Robertson Insurance as their personal insurance source. To give you a better idea of what I do on a daily basis, I spent my day this morning with a couple, early 60s, beginning retirement. Our process consisted of them giving me every bit of personal data that they have. Tax returns, bank accounts, checking, savings, qualified retirement accounts, IRAs, Roth IRAs, investment accounts, brokerage accounts, real estate assets, any insurance coverage they have. At that point, also getting a list of any expenses, any liabilities. Every single piece of financial data that they have, they turned over to me. When I go meet with them next week, I will be able to give them a detailed, comprehensive analysis of their financial situation, which would include a net worth summary, a cash flow analysis, a tax analysis, asset allocation analysis, investment performance analysis, basically a snapshot of their situation right now, be able to tell them where they currently are, give any recommendations, let them know if there are any shortfalls in their future in retirement, let them know where they stand in being able to support their survivorship needs, as well as any charitable contributions they want to make, or money left to their heirs. I believe that this can give you a bit of further information into what I do, and that my knowledge of finance is not only strong, but it's well-rounded. Also, the last thing I'd like to get across is the one concern is a learning curve. And, you know, I think I've explained that with my office being right in West Bethlehem, 9th and Broad, I have a full-time assistant who's there and can be committed to be here on a daily basis and take completely as much time as I need to make sure that I'm fulfilling the role of controller. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yelson. Mr. Shire.
Bill Shire, 1890 Eaton Avenue. At the last meeting on this matter, a very valid, well, let me first say I have a prepared statement here that I hoped I would have a chance to give, but I haven't timed it, and I think it goes it definitely goes beyond 5 minutes. Ends up with a proposal for modifications to the budget in such a way that it would make life easier for the administration, the controller, and the council. So if I don't get through it, I hope somebody on the council will ask me to explain it. At the last meeting, a very valid question was raised. Could someone like myself, who has frequently publicly expressed views on this and that, be impartial as a controller? Well, anyone who knows me well enough knows that I would be completely impartial as a controller. Anyone who is familiar enough with my professional career, based as it has been exclusively on facts and analysis, would know that as well. Anyone in the Bethlehem Area School District Task Force on Community Service, which I moderated for 10 meetings, had no idea of my views on the subject. because my job was to assist the group to reach a conclusion on this very contentious issue and not to insert my own views. And anyone who read my op-ed piece in the Morning Call on the pension bond had no idea of my views on this subject, as a number of people said at the time. That was because my objective in writing the piece was only to share the analysis, since a lot of people were having difficulty thinking their way through the ramifications of this rather complicated issue. There is no place for policy views in the Office of the Controller. The job of the Controller is to see that the budget, which expresses policy views of the administration and the council, is adhered to. They are the ones that make policy, not the Controller. To avoid any appearance to the contrary, I would resign from the Board of Trustees of the library, especially since the Controller audits the books of the library. I would resign as president of the Bethlehem Citizens Association, but perhaps continue as a quiet member. I would also resign from the board of the South Bethlehem Historical Society, although continuing as a member. I would continue my associate membership in the Bethlehem Historic District Association and my memberships in the Sun Inn Preservation Association and the Torch Club. This does not mean that I would not make recommendations about the budgetary process in general. In particular, I believe that the ordinance is too restrictive. It says that, quote, "The city controller shall review all warrants for the expenditure of city monies and, if satisfied that such expenditure is within the budget allotment pertaining thereto, shall sign the warrant before it is presented to the city treasurer for payment." That's a quote from Article 111.02. The ordinance does not say what the controller should do if the expenditure is not within the budget allotment pertaining thereto. But there is a rather clear implication that the controller should refuse to sign the warrant and should tell the administration to seek a budget transfer. Note how restrictive this is. Theoretically, it means that if the budget allotment were $100 and the administration were to submit a warrant of $100.01, and the administration, the controller is required then by law to tell the administration to seek a budget transfer of 1 cent. This is, of course, ridiculous. Because any budget is not perfect, it is a forecast, and as such needs to be revised as the year progresses. This is the rationale for budget transfers. But budget transfers could be cumbersome for all involved, especially when they involve small amounts of dollars. The controller is then faced with a dilemma. Approve a small expenditure beyond the budget allotment and violate the law, or require that the council approve a small transfer, making life more complicated for everyone. Since I only have 30 seconds left, I'm not going to try to explain my solution to this, but I think there is a way out of this. Right now, well, I don't think I should go any further at this point because I would leave something half unsaid, but I think there is a way, and I would ask council and the administration and the controller to all get together and see what we can do about this. I think there is a way out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. Mr. Fenning.
Robert Fenning, 2830 Linden Street, the forgotten nominee. I'm not a nominee anymore. Can I get this tie off? It's killing me. It's not my style. Anyway, let me clarify a couple things. I have a very, in my mind, at least firm idea of what the role of the controller is. In our city government, there are 3 elected branches. We elect a strong mayor. Under a strong mayor, the mayor form of government, he can do a lot of stuff, got a lot of power. We elect a council. Council is primarily there to oversee the purse strings. And then we have the controller, who by law is part of the internal control system. So if we're going to have a well-balanced government in a sense to protect the citizens, we really have 3 independent branches. To the extent that they become unindependent, the citizens of Bethlehem begin to suffer potentially. So I think it's very important that the controller be independent. Mr. Shire read the ordinance, and technically under the ordinance, the 1 penny overage, you don't get it. My understanding is the controller doesn't have a lot of wiggle room. Controller's there to oversee things, to perhaps catch things. Not to say, oh, well, they made a proposal for the greenway. I don't like the greenway, therefore I'm going to deny it because I don't like the greenway. That's not the controller's functioning. If it is, they shouldn't be in the job. It's long in the budget, nothing wrong on the surface. It's for the stated purpose, go for it. That's the function of the controller by law, to review the warrants, to make sure everything's in order, and to approve. You passed some resolutions tonight, giving the controller and the mayor certain rights to sign things. I doubt that the controller would refuse to sign something just based on his or her personal opinion about the subject matter. I hope they would, at least. So I think there's very little wiggle room for the controller to make value judgments. I may be wrong about that, but I don't, as I see the job, there's very little. Strike zone is well defined, doesn't move around, in my opinion. So if I were controller, my primary function would be to serve as the chief internal control function. Now, once that job is done, and it's assuming I have something of value to add to the financial situation, the overview of it, I would do that. But my primary job as controller would be a fairly technical one. Doesn't involve preparing anything. It involves working with the outside accountant. So I don't know, A, how much of a team player the controller has to be. Because the more of the team player, the less independent, and the government structure starts collapsing. I don't see the controller as having an overriding voice in evaluating certain things unless it's within their expertise or unless they bring that in. So to me, it's who has got the audit experience, who has got the ability to follow the law to the letter, not make judgments. Don't say, well, it's only a penny, it doesn't matter. If council chooses to loosen the ordinance, as Mr. Shire, I think, was going to propose, then that's a different horse, different law. You follow it. But council has, as purse string manager, has to change their ordinance to do that. So just my thoughts on the process, and really you are supplanting the will of the electorate on one of those three legs. And I think it's very important that you continue the independence within that office. Doesn't mean that the controller has to pick fights with the business administrator on a daily basis. But it also doesn't mean that the controller gives the signature stamp to the business administrator to go ahead and stamp everything without review. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fennick. Anyone else like to address City Council? Mr. Grubb.
Dana Grove, 2420 Henderson Place. Actually, I hadn't intended on getting up, but somebody earlier made a comment about one of the candidates indicating that they did not plan on running for election. And I don't think that should enter into your decision. It has more to do with qualifications. It has more to do with experience. Has more to do with a person's ability to act in a very independent nature. Because if whether a person's going to run for the office or not, then the decision becomes political. And then you're not making the decision in the best interest of the residents of the city. Steve Antalix also referred to something. When I was working for the city, I had regular interaction with the controller's office, so I understand a lot of the kinds of things that the controller was looking at in terms of the city's finances, paying the bills, and grants management. And the one thing I will say that Steve caused me to think of, and I had thought about it the other day but didn't plan on getting up, was I think it's going to be incumbent for whoever you do select, or if Northampton County a judge ends up making the selection, is to also get somebody who can get up to speed very quickly. You're looking at essentially 22 months. You know, you're not going to, a learning curve, while I think everybody who's a candidate who's been nominated will have some kind of a learning curve, I think any of their abilities to get up to speed very quickly is going to be key. You don't want them learning by a lot of mistakes. And their understanding of city government, of the issues that the city's dealing with, the city's finances, I think should also play into your formula for selecting whoever you select. But at the end of the day, I think every one of the candidates has touched on this. You've got to be independent. You're kind of the third leg of the tripod, and that independence is going to be key to the proper financial operation of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grubb. Anyone else like to address City Council under public comment this evening, under the first session? Seeing none, we will move into item number 3 on our agenda, which is the election itself. Before we move into a roll call, I had mentioned we'd like to open up for discussion, whether it be for candidates, open thoughts, comments, if candidates, if council would like to question any of the candidates or ask questions that have come up new to them, questions from their presentation, follow-up questions from the original 19 that were mailed out. Now would be the time to do it. We would welcome that.
Mr. Evans, question.
So should.
If we vote, can we move out of election and to ask questions later if we are still deadlocked?
Can we turn it out so we can do that right up and
Sure.
Yeah, yes. If we run a roll call, the roll call is complete, we have to tally, and there's no decision made, you gotta be more than welcome the opportunity to open it up for discussion. I'd like to keep get as much air out, as many comments and thoughts as we can. Hopefully to bring this to a resolution tonight, that's the goal. Whatever we can do to bring it to that would be good. Are there any opening comments from council or any questions that council would like to ask of the candidates?
Some things that were said.
Okay.
Okay. Councilwoman Dolan, do you have comments? Or you have to
I have questions, this is questions.
No questions, yeah. Yeah, the way we'll do it, we're not going to bring everyone up alphabetically. What I'd like to do for members of council, if we have questions of a candidate, the Councilwoman Dolan, you're going to ask them to bring someone to the stand. Once they're at the stand, you can complete your question. If any other council members have questions of that candidate, I'd like to ask them why they're at the stand before they move to sit down. Thank you.
And then when that process is over, there'd be a chance for discussion and make a
Yes.
general comment.
Yes.
I have questions of both Bill Shire and of George Yasso. So could, Bill, if you would come up first. It's one of my last name after that word.
Just in case.
I mentioned this a bit earlier this week, but I wanted to, or last week, to bring it up again, a few nuances. We understand that since you moved here from the different places that you've lived in your life, you've found at least one social group that we're aware of, because we see you in that social group on a regular basis. It's a group of men and women who are interested in the city, who are interested in school district and county issues, generally, when they come to be somewhat critical, to present their ideas, and not necessarily to laud us and say what a great job we're doing, but to either be outright critical, occasionally praising, but usually with, at the very least, suggestions or criticisms. My question is, what do you think you can expect in terms of pressures from some of those people? We heard from two of them tonight, but at the same time, people are rooting for you, and I'm not sure that they would always say exactly what they might say, we'll say at Perkins after a meeting. So what kind of pressures do you think you might face to live up to that reputation that your group of friends has to be critical, to look at things askance, to try to bring a different perspective to the administration?
I would be surprised if I got any, quite frankly. Let me tell you a little bit about the group, which I guess we can sometimes call it the Perkins Group ourselves. Incidentally, we'll be moving to the south side shortly, which will be a lot closer, and everyone in this room is invited to come. It originally started to talk about city council issues, but it's gotten, we go quite far afield. State issues, book reviews, movie reviews, concert reviews, reports on various retail stores, anything that people get together to talk about, with one exception. Because there's some Republicans in the group, we never talk national politics. But other than that, we talk about everything. And I would expect everybody in the group, I think they would be disappointed if I weren't completely impartial. But I can't speak for the group, obviously. But if there were any pressure, which I would expect, it would be resisted. Because the job of the controller does not involve policy views. It involves following the law. And if you ask me, I'll explain what I have in mind.
I might get to that later. In terms of, and we all know HIPAA, if you're a doctor or a nurse, you can't talk about a patient. But I'm not sure anything like that exists in terms of the controller. Sitting around talking, things that are going on in the city that you are privy to, but perhaps no one else is. Would you throw out some thoughts or get some feedback from the Perkins group to see what they think about these things? Would they become an influence? It's not hard to expect. What kind of influence would they be?
Well, for example, now, perhaps I should have mentioned I would continue attending the Black Watch at Church of the Manger, which is run by Gus Lupus, among others, and perhaps some other groups in the city, just to hear what people are thinking. In other words, be a listener. I certainly would be very careful not to say any privileged or any confidential information. That would be a no-no. Yeah, I would listen to what people have to say everywhere in the city, but be respectful of the information that's in the office.
Been on council for 6 years, and it's one of those things when you've either been in politics or a commentator on politics, end up having a history of commentary. And one thing that is always, I'm sorry, but it's rubbed me the wrong way about you is we disagree on the subject of state grant monies, especially in regards to nonprofits. And there have been times when you have gotten up and you've expressed resistance to the idea of grant funding, sometimes going directly from the state to a nonprofit or a corporate entity in the city, and sometimes even just passing through the city. I'm pretty sure I might even have rolled my eyes at that sort of thing. Would you refuse? I understand that you can't bring your personal policy, but if it's more than personal policy, if it's a strong ethical belief in what's wrong and what's right, wouldn't that give you the right to hold something up, to refuse to sign a check if you think it's illegal, whether or not it's stated in our ordinances or not?
No, it would not be right to hold it up. I'm not sure actually what you're referring to, so we could maybe after the meeting discuss the specific instances. You know, if a grant goes to a nonprofit, I mean, that's the business between the grantee and the nonprofit. The one thing I would like to do about nonprofits, and I would like to ask the administration for a list of the mercantile tax that's received from various people, just to make sure that everybody's paying their fair share. And here's another case where we could revise the law, because the law on the mercantile tax doesn't give any exemptions to a small nonprofit who, I mean, you know, the mercantile tax is only 1.5 mils. And if you make $1,000 in commercial activity, what's 1.5 mils of that? That's 15 bucks. Should they have to bother filing the paperwork to pay the mercantile tax? I think that's something also that should be looked into. An exemption for the smaller nonprofits like you have in the income tax code. And as a matter of fact, we should look at the Form 990 and see the categories there and how they're defined and adapt our ordinance to those categories to the extent that we could. I think that's another thing that could be done to make life a little bit easier for everybody.
Some people, and it has been done, I think it's recently in Allentown, some people get into the position of controller and they use their offices like a bully pulpit, you know, to harass or demean city government, often rehashing old events, uncovering things that happened in the past. So this would lead me to two questions. One is, I know you're comfortable with a microphone, so I don't think you have any aversion to speaking.